Hi guys, and welcome to the Sunderland vs Carlisle match review. So Sunderland have just beaten Carlisle by 3-1, the same scoreline in which we beat Gateshead at the weekend as well, away from home when we beat them by 3-1 as well. So we'll get into the game. First and foremost, we did have Rory Matthews making his debut for the club in goal across a back three. We saw Tom Flanagan, Willis, and we also had Morgan Feeney as the back three, which was good to see. It was good to see Feeney starting from the off. We had Conor McLaughlin playing as the right wing back, and we also had Jack Diamond playing as the left wing back, which was quite an interesting one to see, and we'll get into it later on. I'll describe and I'll give you my thoughts on how he did in that position. In the middle we had Scowen and Power, and then as the sort of front three we had Grigg in the centre with O'Brien on one side and Gooch on the other. So getting into the game, and the opening first 5 minutes, to be fair, it was mainly Carlisle. They actually quite impressed me throughout the game, and of course you need to pay respect to every opposition, and you need to bear in mind that they've played a few more friendlies than us. They actually beat Wigan in the previous friendly, but by 2-1. They drew with Gateshead the week before that, or a few days before that, I do believe. So it's not as if we were up against a team that aren't very sharp, and I think it's also worthy of noting that when we are playing these pre-season friendlies, what we are doing, Phil Parkhurst is putting together two separate 11s mixed with youth and then players who you expect to be in the first team and then expect to also be on the bench, sort of fringe players as well, is throwing in there as well, and he's trying to split that between two teams. So it's not like it's what I consider to be, or maybe even what Parkhurst considers to be, our strongest squad as of yet. He's trying to give everyone a chance and mix the squads as well to experiment, and that's what pre-season is all about. Because very early on, about probably 20 odd minutes into the game, 30 minutes into the game, you can see people on social media already writing us off, saying, "Oh, we're shit. If we can't batter a team like Carlisle, then what's the point?" And it's just shut up. It's frigging it's the second game in pre-season. And the second game the lads have played in 5 months. And like I say, it's a really mix and match squad. It's time to experiment, give play some game time. Of course, it'd be nice to batter teams, but we won the game anyway. But yeah, I thought I'd just put that on record anyway. But yeah, so getting into the game, 5 minutes in, and Carlisle were definitely on top. They were coming at us, playing some decent passing moves, without really troubling the keeper, but they were just pumping ball after ball and cross after cross into the box, which, to be fair, we're dealing with very well. Feeney was getting on the end of quite a lot of them. He was getting it away. He played all right, and he looked decent, with the ball at his feet as well, which is always nice to see from a defender. I love to see a sort of ball-playing defender. Not saying he was necessarily playing the ball left, right and centre, but he looked quite comfortable on the ball. Willis was getting there as well. But then, to be fair, after about 5 minutes, we started to gain control a little bit. Scowen, for me, was brilliant. I was really, really impressed with him. He was the sort of the Scowen and the player that I believed we were bringing into the club, and I was quite... and I've made myself... I've made this known over the last sort of 6-7 months or so, 8 months, that I wanted to see Scowen start games, because I don't think he was really played in the right position when he was brought in, and he wasn't really given a fair crack of the whip, because Scowen was brilliant, and he really, really impressed me. Whenever Carlisle would break forward defensively, he was brilliant, and he was absolutely busting a gut. So much money. He stuck out like a sore thumb when we were defending, because as soon as they break forward into the final third, he just sprint out of nowhere. He'd appear from just nowhere, absolutely bombing towards whoever the attacker was for Carlisle, fling himself at the ball, very Catamol-esque, if you will. But at the same time, that isn't all he had to his game. He was also not afraid to get forward and have a crack at goal, because he had a good 3, 4, 5 shots throughout the game as well. A couple of them just not really testing the keeper, should I say, but there were close efforts at some of them, a couple of blocks here and there. But it's good to see that he's not afraid of shooting, and I like that. I'd rather, and to be fair, I saw it throughout the game. We weren't really trying to walk the ball into the back of the net at times anyway, or as much as we usually see. It's so frustrating when we see us break forward. We get to the sort of final third, and it just breaks down, because someone will just put a foothold on the ball, will wait, will be really slow, make it easy for the opposition to defend against. But Scowen, the second he had a sight on goal, he was going for it, and he was pinging balls towards that goal, but unfortunately none of them hit the back of the net. But yeah, so another player that was impressing me and has impressed me over the last couple of games is, again, Diamond on the left-hand side. Defensively, to be fair, we didn't really see, or he wasn't tested massively down the left-hand side, but he was definitely tracking back as and when needed. But when he did get forward, he really impressed me. He had their right back on strings at times. Don't get me wrong, he lost the ball a couple of times, but I suppose that comes with his sort of inexperience. There was a couple of times where he kind of needlessly lost the ball, but a lot of the times, he really did have that right back for Dhannoo, and he was taking him on quite easily, and then putting a few dangerous crosses into the box early doors. Without really making anything, but there was one chance that Diamond did start off. He managed to nick it past the right back, dinked it towards the back post, and there was Conor McLaughlin, who I think he should have done better. It was a completely free header, but he's kind of flung himself at it, and the keeper's actually made a very good save, to be fair, with his feet, but I think he probably should have done a little bit there. Conor McLaughlin shown a bit more composure. But on to Conor McLaughlin, he was a player who, as well, and I never thought I'd say it, he really, really impressed me. He looked like a class above today, which is, again, something I never thought I'd say. Defensively, he was winning the majority of his aerial battles. He was tracking back, and he was really stopping their left winger from doing much. And he looked brilliant going forward as well. He was chopping inside and then putting balls in with his left foot, and they're all coming out onto his right foot. And he was just tearing them apart at times down the right hand side, which I just never associate with Conor McLaughlin. Not saying he was absolutely outstanding, because again, it's a pre-season. I'm not going to think too much into any of these performances in pre-season, but you need to give credit where credit is due. So throughout the first half, in general, it wasn't a great viewing. It wasn't a great spectacle at all. There was a couple of half chances here and there for both sides. But a lot of it was just kind of hopeful efforts. But I thought I would just pick out the clear positives. But I think that again, which I mentioned in the last review, I think if you had someone like Scowen in the middle, then someone next to him who was creative and more forward-thinking, and then you'd obviously have Scowen, who is the box-to-box midfielder, which he definitely was today. He fit the bill for that title absolutely perfectly into a T. But power for me, he was, again, he didn't necessarily put a foot wrong, but he didn't really put his stamp on the game. There was a few times where he had ample space in front of him, and you just want him to drive forward, but he'll just kind of control it, and he'll spread it sideways again. And you're thinking, just get at him, because Scowen was doing the defensive work and the sort of driving us forward, which was good to see. But you can't only rely on one play for that, because you need that creativity to flow through the centre of the midfield, because otherwise you end up with a massive gap between the midfield and the final third, and you don't want that, because then it becomes so isolated for that front three, and particularly for whoever's playing as the central striker, and Will Grigg. And to be fair to him, who started, of course, he did actually look quite lively. And again, like I said in the last review, and I keep saying this, I'm going back to the last review, but I did say, when we have seen Grigg, he's quite known for just kind of wandering slowly and kind of not really looking bothered across the opposition back line. But he weren't doing that. He was coming deep for it, holding off players, helping it on, and he was really getting involved, and I love to see that as well. But it did go to half-time 0-0, and I was relatively pleased at the positives that I saw, but of course I knew that things were going to change on about the hour mark, because we're going to bring in a completely new 11, which we did. But that didn't go to say that, Carlisle didn't throw anything at us, because for the first 15 minutes of the second half, they were absolutely all over us like a rash, and we really came out very, very slowly in that second half, which I was quite disappointed with, regardless of how, kind of uninspiring the first half was. We really kind of just let them drive at us, and they did have a couple of little exciting plays in that Carlisle side. But anyway, it was the Carlisle player. I'm really bad again with names. He just took a hopeful strike from distance, not really much power behind it, and it kind of just went straight at Remy Matthews. And on his debut, bless him, it was horrible to watch. It's gone straight to him, and he's kind of just fumbled it and let it go past him and into the back of the net, and it never should have gone in a million years, and it really was Lee Camp-esque. It was that bad. But, I'm not going to hold it against him. It was a slippery surface, although, it's a wet day. I'm trying to come up with any excuse for him. Because other than that, he didn't really put a foot wrong. His distribution at times was a little bit questionable, but, on the flip of a coin, some other of his distributions were very good. So, I'm not going to hold that against him, luckily, and hopefully that's just out of the way now. That's out of his system, and it is just a pre-season fumble, and that's it. But yeah, it's gone in, and we're a goal down, and probably deservedly so. If you're going off the second half performance and how we came out, that's probably was deserved. But an hour in, we brought on 10 substitutions, so I'm not going to bring them all. I'm not going to name them all. The only player that did remain on the pitch from the original 11 was Tom Flanagan, who, to me, I really thought he was poor. I really thought he was poor. There was a few times where Diamond did come deep for it, and it's only a 10-15 yard pass from just play it along the ground. and he'd absolutely twat it, and I mean twat it, just straight off the pitch, and it's no way near him. I don't know what he's doing. He's under no pressure. Just play it into Diamond, and he's smashing it out of play. He's smashing it out of play, and there's a couple of times he's tried to break forward himself, which I don't mind if you're in an area that isn't going to put yourself in, in danger necessarily. I don't mind players trying to bring the team forward. If it fails, it fails. But he tried to take on their sort of striker a couple of times, and he'd lose it, and then out of frustration, hack down the striker. And it just, it's just typical Flanagan frigging spaghetti legs. He just pissed me off a bit today. He can be decent, and Flanagan, but he just reminded me of the Flanagan of old today, and he did really get on my nerves a little bit. But like I say, the 10 subs come on, and it really did change the game. Maguire was on, being one of those 10, and he just become the orchestrator of everything. He was at the centre of everything good. Neil, the youngster, come on. He looked very, very bright. Which is really good to see. Unfortunately for him, he'd hit the post during this game, and he'd also hit it over the bar from a really, really, from really close range. And it was a really good chance for him to get his first goal for the club, but he's put it over the bar. But I'm sure in time it'll come. But he did look very, very lively, which is good to see. But we did make it. We equalised. We made it 1-1. Denver Hume was in down the left hand side, and like I've said before, he loves to just drive at plays and so direct, and it's so hard to deal with. He drives down the left hand side, puts it across goal, and Charlie Wyke, of all players who I slated in the last video, it's good for him to get a bit of confidence. He's put it across goal, and he'd find it harder to miss. But in saying that, with Wyke, there's always a chance that it's going to leap over the bar or go straight to the keeper. But he's managed to nip it past the keeper to make it 1-1, which is, of course, really good. And it'll do loads for his confidence for that, particularly after that horrendous miss against Gateshead. So it's 1-1 at that point. And just a couple of minutes later, that is where the Neil chance came in. Maguire again surging down the right-hand side. He found Neil just inside the left-hand side of the box, but he had no one around him. He could maybe even took a touch. He did it first time, and he's lashed it way over the bar, which was unfortunate for the youngster. And then this is where I started to notice where Carlisle were really just starting to open up at the back. I don't know whether they were tired or what, but their back line was just kind of... They went from really solid that I'd seen in the first half to really just sort of collapsing, and there was gaps all over the place. And it was Luke O'Nien coming down the right-hand side this time, puts it inside for Maguire, the king, and he puts it home to make it 2-1. So it's 2-1 at that point, and I feel like we're sailing. And then again, Charlie Wyke gets on the score sheet to make it 3-1. This time a ball's played over the top, it's played through. Neil helps the ball on, and it hits the post, and it comes back to Charlie Wyke, who nicks it in to make it 3-1. So again, he's got himself a double there, Charlie Wyke. It's going to do the world of good for his confidence, I would hope, anyway, you would think. And it finished at 3-1. So all in all, there's positives and negatives to take from both halves, but I think it's good to see this sort of mix and match side that Parkinson's playing. Like I say, he'll play for the opening 60 minutes. He'll have one starting 11 and then a completely separate starting 11. But I think as we come closer and closer to the season, and we're still very, very close right now, I would expect him to get a good sort of grasp of what he believes his best starting 11 to be, and there'll be less or sort of lesser experiments being sort of taken during pre-season, because he's going to want to try and find his best starting 11 and give him at least one or two games to gel together before the opening game of the League One season. But for this game, yeah, it was good, and it was interesting to see the likes of Neil, who again I think is really bright, Diamond as well. Great to see Conor McLaughlin actually be very, very decent. Like I say, Charlie Wyke got himself a couple of goals. It'll be good for his confidence. Of course, there's a lot of players who, in certain reviews, I slate a little bit, but I slate him on the basis of that performance. But today, Charlie Wyke, he looked decent. He did look decent. I'm not gonna slate him in this one. But yeah, so it's a really good result. Man of the match for me. Of course, that he wasn't a goal scorer, but just someone who really, really impressed me, and that is going to be Scowen. He just looked like an absolute beast in the centre of that midfield, and I love to see him in that position, and I would definitely put him in there for the first game of the League One season, 100% for me. But that'll be it, guys. So what did you guys think of the game, and who was your man of the match as well? That's something I forgot to ask in the last review. Let me know in the comments down below. But if you have enjoyed this video, please hit the like button for me. It'd be massively, massively appreciated. And subscribe to the channel if you're not already to become a fully fledged member of the Sarny Army. But for now, you take care and stay. Jump!